Welcome back to Mike's Place. So, what I want to do is just kind of go back and say that I didn't really lie, but I kind of made a mistake and said the episodes would be 5 to 10 minutes long, and that's not true. Like, they're literally an hour long, so I guess everything's going to be about an hour long at first, and then maybe it'll kind of tone back down a little bit. But that was it. Before I start, you know what I want to do is I want to I guess I'll just kind of scroll through this real slowly so that people can look at the topics. Because I'll pull some of this out later on. I'm not gonna pull it out for now. And what I want to do is I want to show everyone the little. It's kind of like a schedule, I guess you would say. So we are going to cover, this will be the first 13 topics to cover, and we already did relationships at the top. The second topic is power and control, which it's a section instead of the wheel. 3 is choices, communication after that, responsibility after that, parenting, anger, abuse, domestic violence and violence, victims and victim awareness, substance abuse, addiction, and relapse. So those are like the main topics, without going into anything else. Now, today is going to be what? Power and control. And I already showed the wheel. So this is the power and control wheel. This is something that you can find online by just doing like an internet search, and you can print these out. And you know, the funny thing is I printed this out several times at my house, and I put it on the refrigerator, and the wheel kept disappearing. So I guess it's kind of condemns some people for their actions. And now we have power and control. And what I did was I have like basic definitions. And under control we have power to direct or regulate. And that's just saying when you control something, you have power over it, or you direct or regulate it. You tell it what to do, or you regulate its usage of resources. 2 says reserve or restraint, and that would be like you holding yourself back, having control, or you having, or you restraining someone else. So that could kind of go both ways there. 3 says a device for regulating a mechanism. So they're like saying like a remote control, so you have control over it through the remote. Any type of device that you can use to control something, and all those fall under noun as far as the way that control is being used. And as a verb, control is to exercise restraining or directing influence over, or to regulate. And that's just the action itself, is when you have control over someone and you're doing these things to control them. Exercise restraining or directing influence over. And there's like a kind of a two-edged sword there, because sometimes you have to have a little control. Like in the employer-employee relationship, the employer has to have a certain amount of control because they're directing people, and they have to have some, maybe not necessarily influence in the sense of like personal influence, but they direct and influence through directing. and they regulate what goes on, making sure people are doing their jobs correctly and everything. 2 says dominate or rule, and you can basically just have control over somebody through dominating them or ruling over them. By ruling, they probably mean controlling them through some pretty sadistic means. I didn't put the part of speech for these. I think these actually fall under several, or maybe adverb or something like that. And this is for power. 1 is the ability to act or produce an effect. Power. So this would be in the sense of like electricity power, and you're producing the energy that turns like an electric motor or turns on a phone through a battery or something like that. 2 says a position of ascendancy over others, and that means authority. So having power over through your position or your family position or a family place in life. So you have authority over others. 3 says one that has control or authority, especially a sovereign state. So in the sense of they have power, well, it says one that has control. I guess that would be like a central authority. Sovereign state would be just a state that makes its own laws, and so it has power over its people, and it controls them through the laws that they put in place. 4 says physical might, and that's like physical restraint. Also mental or moral vigor, and I'm assuming that's going to be like trying to overpower somebody through playing mental games with them or putting them down through morals. The number of times, number 5 says the number of times is indicated by an exponent. A number is to be multiplied by itself, and that's just in the sense of in math, power is referred to as the power of a number. 6 is force or energy used to do work. That kind of goes with 1. This one actually states force or energy, like electricity or maybe manual production of energy through like horses or something like that. The time rate at which work is done or energy transferred. So force or energy used to do work. The time rate at which work is done or energy transferred is power. And I believe that would go with like physics, where they do the time rate equals power times energy or something like that. I don't know the exact formula on that. Magnification is like they're saying in the sense of power is like making it bigger or making it more bold or something like that. So power and control refer to the tactics that people use to demand things from others. There are There are power and control wheels for reference, which I already showed that in the first episode, and then you can look that up for yourself online through any search engine. Any form of power used to control another is relevant to this topic. Male privilege, physical violence, emotional violence, and financial abuses are usually the main types used. The main point is to break another down in the mind to gain control over their will. Some will give in to the point of sacrificing self and accepting the total control of the other person over them. And that is not the goal of this program. And if, like I said before, if you choose to use power and control techniques to manipulate other people, you probably will have a lot of problems in your life. So this is something I added in, and I went through one day and I came up with these different types of abuse situations, and it falls under power and control because it's basically like this list side on the left having control of the right and abusing power. So in the sense of adult to adult, any job role or any role in society, like they can abuse each other, one can abuse the other, or vice versa or something like that. Adult to adult, inside family, or in a couple, like a partner relationship or a sex relationship. you can use power and control techniques in all those situations. Adult and adult, family, separate, sex. So I think the only thing that was kind of pointing out the together couple or the apart couple, it could still happen. So you have your adult on child. It can happen in family, it can happen in the foster home. Usually the reason it's family or foster there is just because children are usually within that care. So the adult can have power and control over the child can have power and control over the adult can have power and control over elderly, children can have power and control over elderly. That's not a likely one, but it could happen. Elderly can have power and control over children. Elderly can have power and control over adults. Elderly can have power and control over society. Adults can have power and control over society. Society can have power and control over adults. Society can have power and control over elderly and children. So I know some of those situations are a little strange, and I'm sure you could come up with some more, but those were the basic ones that whenever the idea popped in my head, I just kind of jotted everything down and tried to make sense of it. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense to look at the situations and as far as roles in society or roles within the family. Now we have power and control techniques, and these are just techniques that are designed to manipulate the person and control them. Some of them are designed to overpower them. Most of them are just about manipulation, so it's still a form of power. Grooming and luring, there's many different grooming and luring techniques. Most people think of the luring as the person in the van trying to give kids candy, but you have grooming. I guess you could, in the sense, you could always walk up and fix their clothing, you know, always mess with their hair, make comments about it as a form of I mean, maybe every now and then it's flattery, but in the sense of overdoing it, it becomes manipulation, and you're trying to gain control using it as a manipulation technique. There's many different forms of luring as well. Overdoing gifts would be a good example there. Emotional abuse, and emotional abuse has, I mean, there's like an endless list. I would say emotional abuse is more of, it's more designed to hurt the person's feelings rather than attack them or intimidate them through threats of violence. Legal harassment. Now that's a pretty good one, because people can file false charges against you if they want to try and control you. I mean, it could be real charges too, but we're talking in the sense of somebody using these techniques in a manipulative way. There's a lot of different. There's loopholes in the child support program. People can use those loopholes to cause problems. I think a lot of those down here have been closed recently. In the sense of one person can file, I think they call it a restraining order here. So you could just file false restraining orders or something, or real restraining orders. You could also know more about the law and use that as a weapon against the person in a way of overpowering them to control them. Monitoring and stalking. And that's basically always worried about what they're doing and looking through their stuff. I mean, maybe if something odd was going on, you might want to like check through your wife's phone, but for the most part, you probably trust your wife. So monitoring what she does and following her around, and then like trying to go through her accounts whenever she's not around. It's just, not only is it not healthy for you, but it's you trying to figure out ways to control her and by gaining power over her, so, or him, or, you know, both situations. Medical neglect. This is probably more towards elderly people, where you could possibly tell them that I'm not going to take you to your doctor's office unless you give me money or something like that, or you could use some sort of techniques just to make them feel ashamed, or possibly feel inadequate, like they don't pay you to do it or something like that. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can manipulate that situation to try and take control of it. Physical assault, obviously, when a physical assault happens, it's usually power and control based, even if it's just like two random strangers on the street and they get into a fight. It's still one person trying to overpower the other and gain control of possibly, most of the time it's probably just an idea. It's like something that one of them said that the other didn't like. So, but physical assault usually is directly related to trying to overpower and control another person or another group or something like that. Sexual coercion and force. I guess force would kind of go through with physical assault. You might have a little more with the force. It might be like you destroy their property or something like that. Sexual coercion, that could go several different ways of either you denying the person sex, or the other person denying you sex, or maybe they're trying to use sex as like money or something like that. So there's a lot of different situations there. Spiritual conflict to gain power and control. I guess this will come in maybe if you were to look at like the different belief systems within Christianity, and then you think that your belief system is correct over somebody else's, so you use these other techniques to purposely gain power and control, but you use your knowledge of say your spiritual knowledge to cause conflict. So you purposely bring up topics that you know that they're not gonna have the same view on, or something like that, or that they disagree with. So it causes problems, and your intent, or possibly the other person's intent in the situation, is just to gain control through using techniques to overpower you, making you feel inadequate or something like that, or ashamed. Psychological torment, and that's just that falls under the mind games. So psyche is like it literally means the mind, and so it goes with emotional abuse. It goes with psychological abuse, because it's psychological torment, and these would be things that maybe they're just trying to constantly intimidate you, but it's a little more than intimidation, because maybe they don't hit you very hard, but they do hit you. They put their hands on you or something like that. So there's more. It's more of them yelling and saying nasty things to you rather than hitting you. But there is also some physical violence. So it's more psychological. They could be calling you names, or trying to constantly get you to believe that you're something that you're not, or something like that. Deprivation and isolation. And deprivation is basically like going without sleep, and that will definitely break somebody down if you were to do that to them several nights in a row. And the isolation part comes in with family and in society, because you could be using isolation techniques to prevent somebody from seeing family members or friends, or from going to certain locations or something like that. Economic control, that is dealing with anything under economics. It usually involves money or commerce, I believe, and that's just money or trading money. And basically you can either take their money, you can make sure that they don't have jobs to get money, you could possibly force them to buy things from you for more than their value. There's a lot of different situations there. exploiting status, and status is usually like it's like how other people see you when you're out and about in the world, and you could exploit that in many ways. You could destroy their reputation by saying bad things, or you can make them look like something that they're not and sell them to other people. So that's another possibility there. Now we are going to go through power and control situations. And these are, I'll read through the main topics: institutions, culture, social ties, family dynamics, victim barriers, batterer traits. And these are going to be situations where power and control disagreements, struggles will pop up. So institutions, courts, education, medicine, religion, economics, government, social services, media, technology, law enforcement. So for any one of these institutions, and I mean there's an endless list of institutions, there can be power and control abuses by the institution, and then you could have the workers themselves doing the abuse, or you could have the institution abusing their customers or the people that they serve or something like that. So there's a lot of different situations that can happen, and they do happen. I'm sure a lot of people have been in situations involving some of these, and they could relate to them. I kind of feel like the court system here allowed law enforcement to profile me when I was younger, and they used some corrupt legal system practices, but that's all in the past. That's just how I feel. Not to say that that's the truth, but just an example. Under cultures, we have laws, language, traditions, music, celebrities, role models, literature, arts, websites, social media, norms, rituals, and values. And I guess the idea for this would be differences in cultures are they're because they're differences and they're not the same, that it's easy to end up in power and control struggles with other people or with other groups. So in a certain culture, you might visit there and they could have laws that seem like they're just like really corrupt, and like you can't believe that they're doing this to their people, because they don't do that over where you live. So that's one example. Language, if you speak a language that somebody else doesn't speak, and then you use that as a weapon to talk to your native people, your friends in your native language, then you would be using a form of a control technique. So manipulation, control technique. Traditions, there could just be disagreements. Music is an easy one for people to argue over. Celebrities, definitely. Some of these topics too, you could be using these, like you could use a celebrity as an example, and constantly throw it in your partner's face that you're not good enough, you're not as pretty as her, like you look like her but she's more beautiful, something like that. And that's just designed to make them have low self-esteem so you can have power over them. Literature, arts, websites, social media, norms, rituals, values, you can attack any of that stuff. The social media one is that one's pretty interesting, because I saw my children go through situations with groups, and the groups would get a little abusive and attack certain people, and I didn't like it, so I kind of told them to not get involved with any of that stuff. 3 is social ties, and this is power and control situations, social ties. Social ties to children, parents, extended family, pets, clubs, groups, teams, congregation, classmates, teachers, childcare, neighbors, coworkers, sponsors, mentors, or friends. And it's just basically showing that in any of these social situations that you're tied to, there can be power and control struggles. If you're a parent, it's possible you've had some issues with certain teachers, and you felt like your views on the topic weren't your opinion wasn't taken seriously, and it just caused some disagreements to where power and control was used to maybe get your point across in a way, like just you want the other person to think that you're right, so you basically just manipulate them, or you're nasty to them in some way. Any of these, child care is probably a big one for some people. You know, you drop your kids off and then they come back and something's happened, and you have to have you have a disagreement, and you might end up in a power and control struggle where you start saying things that you shouldn't be saying. Family dynamics. Anytime you're around other people for long periods of time, you're gonna have disagreements, and those are gonna be power and control struggles between either family members, people, or groups. So under family dynamics, we have secrets, child abuse and neglect, incest, mental illness, substance abuse, criminal activity, elder abuse, animal abuse, poverty, divorce, blended families. And some of these are a little interesting because, you know, if you have an adult in the family who's trying to manipulate a child, you're going to have, they're going to be trying to have the child keep secrets or something like that. And that whole secret system is literally designed to get that person to not have respect for their parents in a way, and to pull them away. It gives you power over them. Takes the parents, you know, influence over them away and gives it to you in a sense. And it can easily be done with secrets. You know, just constantly having the child keep secrets for you. Child abuse and neglect. It can be literally directed to overpower the child and control them. You could be hitting them or locking them in bedrooms or not feeding them. Incest is just sex within the family, and that could be used as a weapon. You know, a situation that could pop up for that would be like maybe a brother and sister. The brother is older, and he's been like basically forcing sex on his sister, and when she tries to have a relationship later on in life, then he comes through and he wants to control her, so he forces himself on her again to overpower her and control her. So definitely a situation that can fall under that. Mental illness, that's a good one, because I have some mental illness problems going on, and like I had to go and seek help for the problems I was having. And then certain people in my family wanted to try and use that as a weapon against me, to try and send me to jail, or to send me to like a inpatient rehab, and just nonsense. Substance abuse. You can use substances always to control other people, and if the drug is addictive enough, it can definitely give you power over that person, especially if you take their money away and get them addicted to something that's very addictive. Criminal activity, you can force this on people, force them to do the activity by overpowering them and controlling them. Elder abuse, a lot of times, I mean, maybe there are some older people who are they're abusive physically, possibly verbally, or they throw things at like let's say they're living in a assisted living facility, and they throw stuff at the staff. Now they're intending to use their techniques to have power and control, but in the other sense, you could also have the employees at the assisted living facility abusing elderly people and using power and control techniques, which those could be like anything, restricting their food or their water, or you hit them whenever you go in their room to clean or something like that, or you tear up their stuff. There's a lot of different situations. Animal abuse could be definitely, if you're directing that at somebody else's pet, it's definitely being used as a power and control technique. Poverty, you could definitely force somebody into poverty to control them. Once you have them in poverty, then you can do whatever you. If you can get them addicted to drugs, you have power over them. Like it's terrible. So divorce, you could threaten that. Like if the partner doesn't want to leave the marriage, you could constantly threaten divorce, and that would definitely be a technique that is used to control them, to give you power of them and control them because you know they don't want to leave. Blended families, I'm not really sure what that is talking about. Maybe one family is forcing themselves upon the other in the sense of like living with them and using them, eating their food or something like that. Victim barriers for power and control situations. So these would be barriers for the victim to get out of the situation. They could have addiction problems, trauma, disability, vehicle, housing issues, education issues, job, money, social support, sexuality, immigrant status, criminal record, values, fear, love. So there's like so many different types of situations where you could either use those techniques to gain control over somebody else, or they could use those techniques to gain control over you. In the sense of the victim, once you're a victim and it goes a little beyond like normal, and somebody starts to literally use power and control techniques to mess up your life and to control you, it can get pretty nasty. I'm sure that's how a lot of people end up living in the streets. I've literally been out taking my morning walks, and I see people leaving from one house with like a big bag of stuff, and they're just walking off, and it usually looks like there's possibly like they were a victim, or they've been a victim over and over again, and they're just being used for sex or something like that. Who knows? Maybe they're just leaving a friend's house. What? Could be anything. Education, definitely. If you're uneducated, that's a barrier if you're a victim. If you don't have a job, that could be, or if you don't make enough money, definitely. Social support. If you have groups that will help you with certain things, or people that you can go to with certain types of problems that you have, that's definitely gonna reduce the amount of barriers that block your way of getting out of the situation. Sexuality, that could be your preferences. It could be a lot of different things. Maybe you're too open with your I don't know, the way that you are, and you allow yourself to be the victim of multiple partners over and over again, even when it's not healthy. Immigrant status, definitely, that's a barrier once you become a victim. If you're an immigrant, like you're going to be, not only do you have the threat of being taken back to where you came from, but there's also other people could be threatening you to get rid of you, to send you back or something like that, or to report you. Criminal record, if you have a criminal record in your past, that's definitely a barrier. Your values, if you don't have values, or if they're not good values, then yes, definitely, if you become a victim, then that's definitely not going to help you very much. Fear, victim, if you're in fear, that's definitely going to be an issue to where you're going to stay in the power and control situation. Love, if you really love someone and they're abusing you, it's that could be a hard thing to not only deal with, but to get through or get out of if it's violent and abusive. And we have batterer traits: entitled, superior, self-centered, manipulative, possessive, controlling, contradictory, deflects responsibility, distorts love. So these are the person. Batterer traits are the person that does the usually physical violence is battery. So they have a sense of entitlement, and they will use that always as a form of power and control. They might say things that are like racially related or money related, or they might say like their family's better than the other family or something like that, and that's where the superior comes in. And usually self-centered is the person doesn't really see past themselves, so they don't see the damage that they do to the other person emotionally or physically. They don't see the pain and suffering that the person goes through when they're healing from the trauma. So definitely being self-centered will cause you to use power and control techniques against other people, and you won't even mean to do it. You won't even know you're doing it because you're self-centered and you just don't care. Manipulative batterers, probably they're going to be a little manipulative with words and stuff like that to gain control by overpowering the other person. Possessive in the sense of like you hit them and you tell them that they belong to you, I guess that's what that would mean. And it's definitely designed to overpower them and control them, keep them fearing you and to stay with you. Controlling, that's just like controlling the other things that they do, but being that this is a batterer, it could be a little more severe, and there could be some physical violence that comes with it. Contradictory, and this is probably the batterer using contradictory statements to control the other person. It could also fall under emotional abuse. Deflects responsibility. And that's basically the batterer going, it's not my fault. Like look what you do. You made me slap you around or something like that. So definitely a batterer trait, and it's used to control the situation and keep power over the person that they want to control. This is distorts love, and it could be that you just don't love them at all, but you say you do, or the other way around doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I guess it would just be something like that. Now we're going to move to non-physical abuse. Emotional abuse, anger, humiliation. And these are non-physical abuse, so most of this is going to be different types of emotional abuse. And I'll read off the topics. Emotional abuse, anger, humiliation, economic abuse, sexual abuse, using children, coercion, threats, and intimidation, using citizenship or residency privilege, social isolation, minimizing, denying, and blaming, technology, and privilege. And these are the topics from the power and control wheel. So I won't touch too much on the topics, I'll just go through them. Emotional abuse, anger, and humiliation. Using the word love to manipulate. Putting him or her down by making him or her feel bad about him or herself. Sarcasm is usually the key there. Other people can usually see sarcasm when you're doing this as well. Using mocking nicknames privately. You might call her something that's nasty. You made up a nickname for her or him or whoever this is. Privately or in front of others, name calling. Right, so there could be just something that you say to them in private that hurts their feelings, or it could be something that's you made up a name and you use it in front of other people to get other people to say it, and those other people don't really understand that you made that up as a way to abuse your partner. Playing mind games or making the person feel guilty in some way, and that's just things that are designed to make them confused. Maybe you could have something like moving their stuff around, telling them that you're going somewhere and you're not. There's a lot of different mind games. You could take their stuff and hide it. You could destroy their stuff when they're not around. And this says making them feel guilty in some way. That goes with the mind games, where you're just using techniques that are designed to make them feel guilty or ashamed, or put them in fear or something like that. So you have staring, giggling, laughing at him or her, and these are basically these are forms of intimidation too, or possibly sarcasm. Laughing at them when, say, if you say something, they laugh, and then you do like a like making fun of them. That could be or fall more along the lines of like sarcasm. Staring at them is an intimidation. Laughing at them, that would be like maybe not laughing when they laugh, but just laughing at anything that they do wrong to make them feel stupid. Treating them like a servant, making them do stuff for you, telling them what to do, all that stuff. Utilizing him or her to inflict abuse on others. So now, that one, a situation that comes to mind with that is like your partner telling you to maybe do all of the punishment for the children. So you're the one that has to yell at the little kids and slap their hands if they're touching stuff they shouldn't touch or something like that. So it makes you look like the bad guy, and they do that constantly, and then they use that same technique, and they can turn you against other people, say friends or family members or anything. So those are just a few strange situations that could pop up under there. Saying certain words that trigger a reaction from a past event. That's just basically bringing up the past, and there could be certain words that you do say, and it could be certain things that were said at the situation that bring it back up, and all you have to do is say like those couple of words, and then they'll remember the situation, and the situation might have been something that involved you abusing them in some way, like physically or sexually or something like that. Writing his or her family lies about her or him. So that's just writing lies to the family, telling them maybe you're going to tell the family that they're addicted to drugs, or they stay out all night, they don't come home, they don't take care of the kids, something like that. Calling him or her racist names. Obviously that's directed at the race, and there's a lot of different things that could be said there to try to, as a form of abuse, attacking the person's heritage or anything like that. Criticizing his or her religion, class, or family. That's probably one of the main things that does happen when people have disagreements. They start arguing and making fun of the other person's family, or maybe they start criticizing the school or class or something like that they don't like. Showing off personal items in public. I guess if somebody shows off your bra or panties or something like that, or your boxers, it could be kind of embarrassing, and they're doing it as a form of non-physical abuse or violence. Humiliating someone, causing embarrassment and shame. Questioning the person's sexual preference or reinforcing internalized homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, straight phobia, so any type of phobia, I guess. And these are related to sexual preferences. And this would be, there's many different situations that could pop up, but you could have people just using these phobias as a way to manipulate the other person to make sure that they don't turn gay, or they don't turn straight, or they don't leave them, or something like that. Sex-related slurs during or after sex, and that could have many different forms. It could be that you get done and you just say something disgusting like, "Oh, that was so gross, I don't even know how I did that with you," or something like that. So there's a lot of different situations. You could just say something like, "Oh, you disgust me," when you're done, or something like that. Just any slur that's designed to hurt their feelings. Denying spirituality based on a sexual preference. I'm not really sure what that means. Maybe that's like somebody is a homosexual and their partner's like, "Oh, you can't be a Buddhist, or you can't be a Christian, or you can't be a Muslim because of your sexual preference." So they use that as a way to just manipulate them, or to keep them from going around somebody, possibly. Keeping him or her awake all night before an important day. Withholding affection or using jealousy as a weapon. Withholding affection is, just basically not showing affection. Using jealousy as a weapon, I guess that's just always being jealous, and you could maybe attack your partner, or attack the person that they like, that you're jealous of. It could be a lot of different things. And I have a comment. It just says, "You're effing crazy," and that would fall under could fall under the sex-related slurs. It could fall under just making them feel like they're crazy, or anything like that. It's emotional abuse. Economic abuse. Preventing someone from getting or keeping employment by causing them to be late, miss work, or leave early. Stalking or harassing at work. Sabotaging partner's performance, potential, or reputation. And those are pretty nasty things that you could do to somebody to attack them, to try and control them. You can mess up their performance by making them stay up all night and then they can't work. Their potential, if you continuously have them doing, like, you get them drinking alcohol or doing drugs all the time, like, their potential for just becoming something more than what they are now kind of goes down. And you can attack their reputation in many ways. And that would be like, you could use social media to say bad things. You could say bad things to their family. In the sense of being economic abuse, you might be telling other people not to loan whoever this person is you're controlling. Tell other people not to loan them money, or something like that, or it could be a lot of things. Preventing access to finances, and that's just preventing the person you're controlling from having money. Demanding money, that's like stealing it. Stealing money and or possessions. Accusing him or her of stealing or damaging property to get him or her in trouble. And that would be basically just like filing a false police report about damaged property, or something like that, or something that was stolen. jeopardizing his or her employment or their older children's employment by any form of harassment, threatening to report him or her for working under the table. Obviously, that's self-explanatory. People aren't supposed to work under the table, and if you threaten to report them, it can give you power and over them and to control them. Not letting him or her get job training or schooling. That would definitely be economic abuse, and you would be trying to control this person by keeping them poor and stupid, basically. Placing joint assets in one person's name. I guess that would be economic abuse in the sense that that person could just leave and take everything, or that person could just be abusing any income generated by the ownership of it, of the assets. Using credit cards or money without the owner's permission. That's obviously just theft, and it's economic abuse if you're running up someone's credit cards without asking them. Sex in return for money. Yeah, it's economic abuse if the person that wants the money is demanding money from the other person, but you could also have the situation where one person's forcing the other person to have sex with other people, so that's another one. Using unemployment to control. I guess they mean in the sense of constantly making the person lose their job as a form of economic abuse to control them. Create debt that cannot be repaid. Yeah, if you have more money than them and you constantly loan them money and that you know they can't pay it back, then you have them in debt and you're trying to control them through power techniques. And the technique would be that you're purposely creating debt to enslave that person to you. Bankruptcy, forgery, eviction, manipulation of utilities. Those are all just different forms of abuse that you can use money to accomplish, and they're economic abuse. So next we have sexual abuse. Calling him or her a prostitute or mail order bride or groom. That's just a emotional abuse of labeling and trying to make them feel like they're crazy. Maybe you're telling them that they're a prostitute. Maybe there was some situation in the past that happened, and you constantly bring that up. So definitely falls under sexual abuse. Alleging he or she has a history of prostitution on legal papers, shaming desires, or exploration of sex. And I think this was one of those things that was geared towards people that were incarcerated, because this person would be incarcerated because of prostitution, and then their partner would be finding out about it and bringing it up later on. And you would be using their sexual history as a form of abuse against them to control them. Using children. Refuse to allow contact with children. Threatening to harm the children or take them away from the country of residence if you live in different countries. Threatening to report children to get rid of them. Maybe there's like the parent that has custody of the children doesn't have a lot of money and they live in like a really, really run down home or apartment, and so you're going to use that as a way of, you should go in there and see how dirty it is all the time, and there's like bugs and rodents, and I want to get the kids out of there. I'm worried about the kids. Using sexual preference to have children taken. I guess that would be like if you were maybe for homosexual sexual preference, use it as a weapon against the other person. But you could also have a sexual preference where like an older person likes younger people, so the other parent's like, hey, I don't want you around the kids anymore because you do weird stuff. Like your girlfriend's the same age as your daughter almost, something like that. Using children to relay messages. Guilt related to having children. I didn't want to have these children. They're your children. They ain't mine. I didn't tell you to get pregnant. Mock infertility. I guess if you're infertile and then you mock the other person, it's definitely a form of abuse designed to control them. One person pressuring the other to impregnate or not impregnate, or force termination of the pregnancy. Using children. The children's not born yet, or they want to have a child and they're trying to use that as a way to control the other person. A lot of times people think that once you have a child with somebody that they'll stay with you, or you'll stay with them, or something like that. So that's not always the case. Criticizing and demeaning others, especially the other parent or the other parent's family. That's just talking about the other person's family in front of the children. Using children as leverage in fights or as leverage for visits. Leverage in fights, I'm not really sure what they mean, unless they are like, oh, well, I do this for Billy and I do that for Billy and you don't. So he should stay with me. And when he stays with me, I will come over and let you visit with him, which is my way of having my foot in the door, so I can, even though we are in a bad relationship, I can still control you because I have custody of the child and you want to see your child. So definitely using children. Destructively criticizing parenting skills. Refusing child support payments. Definitely using children to have power and control over others. Coercion, threats and intimidation, fear tactics. Threatening physical harm now or in the future. So that's basically intimidation. Making him or her do illegal things, drugs or alcohol. Definitely you could intimidate them to do it, you could threaten them to do it, you could coerce them to do it, and you're doing it to have power and control over them. Staring, giggling, laughing at him, her, or making him or her afraid with gestures or actions, all intimidation. Making him or her recant a story, usually involving criminal activity. This might be a story where you want them to say something like they were with you and you didn't commit a crime even though you did. Threatening to use corrupt laws to control his or her life or family or friends' lives. Deport, criminal, civil, traffic, school, etc. Let's see. Threatening to use corrupt laws to control his or her life or family or friends' lives. Now there's a lot of corrupt laws out there. There's a lot of loopholes in the legal system that people abuse. One that was used against me was the mother of the children didn't have the children and the grandmother did, and the grandmother somehow unbalanced the child support payments, and I had to pay somebody child support even though we had the same number of kids. And if it was the mother that had the kids, the law would say that no, both parents have 2 kids, there's no child support. So that's one of the ways that can happen. Corrupt laws, and you know, that is definitely a way to control people, mess up their lives, have power over them. You could threaten to have them deported if they're immigration, like in the topic above. If they have a criminal record, you might threaten them with calling, like say if they have a violence history, you can constantly threaten them with calling the cops and reporting that they're being abusive. Civil is usually just dealing with civilians and people, and I guess this would be like threatening to use corrupt laws, civil laws, for relationships against the person. And there's a lot of loopholes. Again, I don't know them all, but there's a lot. Traffic, you could be. The only way you could do this is if you're like purposely making them break traffic laws by, like, I don't know, messing with the steering wheel while they're driving. Now maybe a cop could abuse this against you by saying that you broke laws in the traffic that you didn't or something. So it's kind of a weird one. And that would be law enforcement using power and control techniques and abusive techniques against civilians if they did do that in school and etc. So threatening to use corrupt laws in school I'm not really sure how that would work out, but it's possible, like, you might be just going to school and trying to tell the staff that the person's doing things that they aren't doing or something like that. Threatening to withdraw legal or immigration status. Definitely you're intimidating them to control them. Using suicide or homicide as an intimidating threat to coerce. And this is basically like you're saying, I'm gonna kill myself or I'm gonna kill somebody else if you won't stay with me. Or you could be intimidating the person. Oh yeah, well, I don't have to get you, I can just kill Billy, or something like that. And Billy would be her brother or something, you know. Threatening others who are important to you. That could be friends or family. Driving recklessly. Hiding or destroying important papers, such as a passport, ID card, healthcare card, something like that. Destroying property from his or her country of origin. Destroying property in general. Making someone afraid by using looks, gestures, actions, smashing things, abusing pets, displaying weapons. These are all designed to intimidate and cause fear or coerce so that you can have control over the person. Using looks, actions, or gestures to reinforce homophobic, biphobic, or transphobic control. Possibly like maybe whenever, if you're a gay couple, you're female, and you go near another female that's gay, and the person just kind of looks at you like to intimidate you or something like that, or there is this look, like they always give you this look whenever they're about to hit you, you know. Using age, family, friends, community, or the legal system to undermine or discredit. And that's basically just having other people help you to make the person feel like they're crazy. Maybe you get somebody to go along with the story saying that this happened when it didn't happen, and then you're trying to make the person you want control over believe that this situation happened and it didn't, and you got this other person saying yeah it did but really it didn't. You're just having them co-sign it. Age, I'm not really sure if you could use age as an intimidation. Maybe older people can use age as an intimidation for younger people. Family and friends, community, legal system to undermine or discredit. And that's just basically using the things around you to help not only discredit the person, but make them feel like they're crazy. It would take a lot of work to use the community, but it could be done. Legal system, you could abuse loopholes in the system, definitely. Using the media to instill fear. I'm not really sure how you could do that, but maybe this doomsday prophet thing is a good example there, where it's like if somebody says it's the end of the world over and over again, and they're using it to make you afraid, then yeah, that's definitely intimidation. Standing in personal space, I call that getting just too close to people. It's definitely designed to intimidate them. Maybe it's accidental, but some people do purposely step into your personal space to intimidate you or to control the conversation that you're having. Or using a loud voice, definitely. If you're talking loudly, it's to overpower other people. Using citizenship or residency privilege, lying about his or her immigration status, failing to file papers to legalize immigration status, withdrawing or threatening to withdraw papers filed for residency. And that's just basically using some of these are economic abuse. The paperwork would be for their status, and if you're messing with that, then that could fall under economic abuse because they need that paperwork to work in the country that they're not from. Social isolation, spreading rumors and gossiping, refusing to socialize with him or her, the silent treatment, condemning other people who wish to socialize with him or her, publicly criticizing the victim's manner of dress or other socially significant markers. And that's an easy one to do, to just you wait till you're out in public and then you say, oh, that dress looks absolutely terrible on you. The colors are just, they don't even go together. Like, what were you thinking? Controlling involvement in school and or social activities. So that's definitely social isolation. Especially if you're trying to keep them away from certain groups or certain activities. Isolating him or her from friends or family, children, or anyone who speaks his or her language. I guess that means in a like a bilingual partnership or friendship. You can use the people that speak their language. You could tell them to stay away from them, to isolate them. Not allowing him or her to learn the common language, obviously isolation. Using jealousy to control. Making him or her account for their whereabouts. And that's a weird one, because I always ask for people. I'm like, hey, what'd you do today? And I'm not like trying to be too in your business or whatever, but so that's kind of, I guess if you go overboard and like you're like, oh, what were you doing between 2 and 3? Let me see your phone. Let me do this. Let me do that. What were you doing on social media? You know, so could be designed to isolate them if you start asking them to get rid of people on it. Using knowledge of childhood molestation, childhood secrets to isolate. That's definitely an easy one to use to isolate somebody if that's happened to them and they've confided their trust in you and told you something like that, and you violate that trust by using it as a weapon to control them during arguments. So that's definitely, or you could be using it to isolate them by telling them that, oh, well, when we go over to John's house, I'm going to tell everybody about that. So that's another way of isolating them. Making him or her think no one will believe them. That's making them think they're crazy. Yeah, it's still designed to isolate them. I'm the only one who cares about you. And that's just a manipulation technique. It helps to isolate them, but it's more of designed to manipulate them and make them believe something that's not true, because I'm sure other people do care about that person. Accompanies or limits free time for shopping or visiting family or friends. Definitely isolating, unless there's some sort of an issue. Like I said before, you can have issues with friends and family where it's just not a bad, or it's not a good, it's not healthy for your partner to go around them. Create distrust of the world around them, and you could do that a lot of different ways. Maybe pointing out earthquakes, pointing out hurricanes or something like that as a way of creating distrust of the world. Oh, we don't want to. You want to move down next to your family, but what about the hurricanes that are down in the southeast? Like, I don't want to go down there with all that. And then you just talk about hurricanes and make them have distrust for the world to go down there, because they're going to be worried about some catastrophic event happening or something like that. Monitoring phone calls or vehicle mileage, not allowing personal privacy. Definitely isolation. Those also fall under other things. Monitoring phone calls and vehicle mileage. That's stalking. So it's a little more than just isolation. Minimizing, denying, and blaming. Saying he or she started it. Shifting responsibility for behavior. It's your fault. You deserved it. So that's like, it's like we get into a fight and one person hits the other person, and then the person that was the aggressor and the violent person says, it's your fault. You deserved it. You made me hit you. So definitely they're blaming the other person, and that's also called view shifting. So they're shifting the view to the other person. Minimize the abuse or say it didn't happen. Saying that the abuse is mutual or denying that same-sex abuse doesn't happen. Obviously that's for same-sex relationships. and that's just trying to manipulate the person. Maybe they don't have enough knowledge about abuse, so they just think that this person's right, and they don't even question it. Accepting that abuse is a part of normal life. I don't know if that falls under minimizing, denying, and blaming. Not sure how that falls under there. Deny exploitation is occurring, so that's definitely, if they're being exploited and you just keep denying it, it's definitely just denying that the exploitation is taking place. Technology, sending and or spreading harassing, humiliating, and defamatory messages via cell phones, social networking sites, message boards, chat rooms, IMs, or emails. And that's pretty self-explanatory. There's a lot of different situations. You could attack the person directly through messaging. You can go into a group and try to turn people against them. Just many different scenarios that could play out. Disseminating intimate private information or tricking someone into disclosing private information. Tricking someone into telling you private stuff, that's pretty self-explanatory. Disseminating intimate private information, that's like telling other people about their fetishes, maybe, that like what they like to do whenever they're in private. Some people have trust and they've told other people something that they do in privacy, and it's not that it's weird or not normal, but it's like most people just don't do it, and they're a little embarrassed, so they don't want other people to be told, and you use that as a way to control them by telling other people their personal information. Pretending to be someone else and posting material to damage that person's reputation. Definitely using technology to gain power over them and control them. And you're destroying people's reputation is, that's definitely one of the bigger results of power and control. Usually if you have a disagreement and it goes on long enough, you get into a fight, it is a lot about trying to destroy the other person's reputation, and some of it can get childish and it's out of control, but it all goes right in there. Privilege, using male privilege as strength. That's like just you're bigger and you're stronger, so you overpower them by using that. Using female privilege of withholding sex, or vice versa. It could be male or female withholding sex, and or it could be one wants sex too much. Even there's different scenarios there. Treating the other person like a servant or defining roles or duties. Pretty self-explanatory. I guess it would be privilege would come in by defining the roles and then telling them they have to do them, and treating them like a servant, hitting them or pushing them around or something like that, saying nasty stuff to them. Using knowledge of the laws to control. If you're knowledgeable in the law and you're able to abuse it, maybe not even loopholes, but just abuse it in general, then yeah, that would be using the privilege of your knowledge of the law against that person's weapon. Cutting off access to resources. Use of gender, age, or nationality to suggest superiority. Using victims to control other victims. There were some situations in the news where that came up, and basically some young girls were being exploited for sex, and they were being abused, and then they were being used to lure in other young girls for the same purpose. So now this could also fall in just a basic relationship where you abuse your partner and then you tell them to bring other people into the relationship, like you want them to do that, and then you abuse the other people too because you have no respect for anyone or something. Who knows? Using status as a privilege to control. Status could be something like your military status or job status or law enforcement. Maybe that's a good one. You're the sheriff and you abuse that by telling the person that you know more about the law, so you'll use that as a weapon against them if they don't go along with what you're doing or do what you say or something like that. And so that would be your privilege as a you're abusing your privilege as a law enforcement over a common citizen. Using religious scripture as a weapon or any topic the victim doesn't know. And that it could be disagreements with different religions, but more than likely this would fall under two different belief systems within the same religious system. And maybe there's two different viewpoints on the same section, and you bring that up constantly as a weapon because you know that their view on that topic is different, so you use it in start arguments and fights with them. That can be done with any topic that the other person doesn't know. You can use it as a way of abusing privilege over them. Using cultural or religious background as an excuse for abuse. Cultural or religious background as an excuse for abuse, and you could say that these are my beliefs based on what I was taught, and it says I'm allowed to abuse you as my partner, which obviously the law says all abuse is wrong. So I don't really agree with anyone using religious scripture like that or religious views like that. Forced belief or cultural practices, forcing your belief on the other person or your cultural background practices from your family or your community on the other person. Forced non-belief or cultural practices, and that would be like you don't believe what they believe, so then you try to use your non-belief to pull them away from what they believe. Acting like master of the castle, and that would be it could be either male or female in many different situations, and it would be just abusing your privilege of master of the castle. There might be a lot of things that you could do. Withholding money from other people or telling them what to do, purposely making messes. I think there's a lot of ways you could abuse your privilege. Okay, now to physical abuse. And under physical abuse we have sexual abuse, isolation, physical violence and intimidation. I put torture beside that. Medication abuse and addiction. And you got to remember, these are all dealing with power and control techniques. So under sexual abuse we have forced sex, and that would just be like forcing the person to have sex. It's a form of abuse, and it's designed to control them and overpower them. Lying about STD status, physical violence during sex, and that could be definitely be designed to control them. If you hit them during sex or slap them or something like that. Sexual assault as punishment, and this would be like, I guess, forcing yourself on the person, or like a form of rape as a way of punishing them because you don't like something they did. Forced sex with strangers, obviously that's just, I don't know. I'm not sure if that would fall under physical abuse. Well, it does fall under physical abuse. There's some physical aspect to it, but there's definitely some emotional abuse when you're forcing other people to have sex with strangers. And I would think you would have to have a good amount of control over them, either through abusing them or they have to be addicted to drugs or something there. I don't know on that one. Objectifying for monetary gain, and this is basically turning the person into an object. You no longer see them as a person, you see them as an object, and this object can be traded or used or thrown away or anything. So not good to objectify people, especially for monetary gain. Normalize sexual violence and prostitution, and that would be just like reinforcing, telling the person, oh, this happens all the time, you just get used to it, this it's normal. You know, genital mutilation, I'm assuming this would be hitting the person in their genitals or cutting them or something. I'm gonna say that scarring would be a big part of this, and the person doing the scarring is doing the scarring because it's a form of emotional abuse to control them, but it's also physical abuse designed to keep them in fear. So, and this could be anything from cutting or burning, anything like that, biting. And then you have rape. Obviously, rape is physical abuse. There's an attack there. It's physical. And rape drugs can help too with all this other stuff. So, just helps with it. It can help with physical abuse as well as non-physical abuse. Isolation is kidnapping or using restraints. And I guess under physical abuse, you would have to actually attack the person. So you actually have to touch them in this situation to kidnap them, or to use the restraints. So that's why it falls under physical abuse. I think isolation was under non-physical abuse as well. Physical violence and intimidation or torture. Push, slap, hit, trip, bite, twist arms, kick, punch, grab, choke or strangle, pull hair, burn, which is a form of branding. It could just be burning, but a lot of times they brand a scar onto the person, so the person has a like a visual remembrance to bring back the thought of the abuse or the attack. You could shove them, expose to harmful chemicals, deny food or water, or both, or you can burn them with acid. All forms of physical violence or designed to intimidate. Once you start exposing them to harmful chemicals and burning them with acid, I mean that's pretty extreme violent there. That's a little more than just normal violence. Medication abuse, deny access to medication or purposely over-medicate. Definitely physical abuse, that probably falls under non-physical as well. You're not really touching them. Addiction, you can induce drug addiction as a means to control. There could have been some physical abuse that preceded this or not, or it could have been the physical abuse came with the addiction at the same time to help reinforce the control. Child abuse, power and control. So these are all going to deal with child abuse only. New generations of violent families. And I think that's just basically kind of pointing towards new types of violence popping up within the families, new situations, basically saying that a more intensive study will probably have to be done because there's new forms of violence being done in the families. Runaways, there could have been child abuse before the child ran away. The child might have been manipulated, and then there's some abuse and power and control going on afterwards. A lot of different situations. A kid that runs away might be, in a situation where somebody's abusing them and using power and control over them, so they ran away. Violence on our streets. And this is just like the when people don't understand to not allow people to use power and control techniques against them. You basically just have the violence in the streets because people have disagreements, they fight, they argue. Children are abused, they go out into the streets and commit violence because they don't understand about power and control. All they were taught was child abuse. So, substance abuse, definitely a way to have control over somebody. You might use it as a way to have control over them so that you can abuse them to have even more power over them. Food addictions. That one could be for adults too, but it's most likely that you could get a child addicted to food to control them in some way. Maybe you offer them their favorite snack if they'll be good, or I mean, parents do that anyway, but maybe there's like a little more to it. Like you're trying to get your kid to do something they shouldn't be doing, so you're using their food addiction as a way to control them. Sexual assaults, that's the same for adults and children. Sexual assaults can be used as a means of violence to overpower and control the person. And this can be done to children, it can be done to adults or anything. Date rape, I guess that would be like saying you're going on a date for the purpose of purposely raping the person. This could involve drugs or violence, physical violence, possibly intimidation with weapons. And in the sense of a child abuse, it could be an adult doing this to a child or something like that. Sexual harassment is usually designed to gain power over you and control you. For children, it's definitely a problem because the parents might not be able to pick up on the child being harassed like that right away. So, and there could also be just the child's family members using sexual harassment against the child, and that could be like touching their chest, touching their butt, touching their genitals. You know, there's a lot of different ways to harass people sexually. It could be with comments, even just sexual comments, advances, or weird stuff. Use of pornography, definitely. If you're using it giving it to children, you're using it as a way to control them, and you're probably wanting something more out of that situation. Teen pregnancy definitely can be used to control children, and the parents can use child abuse techniques against the pregnant teenager to overpower them and control them as well. Violence at school, all violence is, you could probably link all violence to power and control, and just at school is child related. And you could have teachers abusing children, though, definitely staff abusing children or something like that. Truancy is not going to school, I believe. You don't show up, you're absent, you're skipping school. And you could be, an adult could be doing that to a child as a form of abuse to mess up their education so that they're stupid and they can have power over them and control them. There's a lot of different reasons why that could be being done. So power and control equality. Now we're going to look at the balance between power and control to make sure that these are just examples to make sure that you're not using these techniques against other people and that they're not using them against you. So we have non-threatening behavior, respect, trust and support, honesty and accountability, responsible parenting, shared responsibility, economic partnership, negotiation, and fairness. And I believe these also, a lot of these were under relationship makers, so pretty much the same thing. Non-threatening behavior, talking and acting so that he or she feels safe and comfortable expressing himself or herself and doing things. That's just, you can have non-threatening behavior by talking quietly, moving slowly around other people if you're a big person, not using your hands when you're talking because that's kind of intimidating. So things like that. Maybe if it's your partner, you walk up and you grab their hand and you kiss them on the cheek before you start talking to them. Respect. Listening to him or her non-judgmentally being emotionally affirming and understanding, and valuing opinions, beliefs, visions, customs, religions, and dreams. And this is just having respect for not only your partner, but this is just for other people in general. Like, other people aren't going to think the same as you. They're not going to have the same values or opinions or beliefs or visions about their future. So even if you think it's a little bit strange that somebody has a vision of the future where they're playing a superhero on YouTube or something like that, and you're just like, that is the silliest thing. But hey, that's what they end up doing, and they end up making money from it, and they have more money than you. So just, you should respect other people's visions. That's all, because that's theirs. They own that, not you. It's not your place to judge other people or what they do or what they think about the future. Trust and support. Supporting his or her goals in life, respecting his or her right to his or her own feelings, respecting friends' activities and opinions, and trust is a big thing in like partnerships, because if you don't trust somebody, you really don't want to be with them, and you don't want them around your personal stuff, like your the nicer things that you have at home. So you can support people by not only talking to them about their goals, but giving them positive insight into it and influencing them to go through with it. Respecting his or her right to their own feelings, his or her own feelings. And people are entitled to have their own feelings, even if they're mad, they're angry. They're not entitled to act out and yell at other people and hit them, but they're entitled to be angry if they're angry. Respecting friends' activities and opinions, that would be part of trust and support. You trust them enough to be out with their friends and not do anything wrong, or to go and do their own activities, and you support their opinions, maybe even though they're different from yours. Could be something like political views or anything. Honesty and accountability. Accepting responsibility for self. Acknowledging past use of violence. Admitting being wrong. Communicating openly and truthfully. So honesty and accountability. You're honest and you're accountable for your actions. And so accepting responsibility for self. And that's basically being accountable for what you do. What you do when you're by yourself, what you do when you're around other people. Are you accountable? If you did something wrong, do you go back and apologize and admit that you were wrong? That's basically being accountable for when you're wrong. Acknowledging past use of violence. If you used violence in the past, then being honest and accountable for your actions. Maybe you're still with that person, so you acknowledge that you were a jerk and you did use physical violence in the past, and you're trying to be accountable for the actions that you did in the past that were wrong and resulted in violence. So you talk to the other person and you reinforce it by not only talking to them about it, but then doing it. Admitting being wrong. You're definitely being accountable by admitting you're being wrong. Communicating openly and truthfully, and that's under honesty and accountability. Just communicating openly and being truthful, that's being honest. But communicating openly, and there's a whole section on communication later on. But open communication is where you have to kind of go out of your way and bring up topics to talk about, and then communicate openly. Maybe you don't have to bring up the topic. Maybe it's your views. You and your partner don't have the same views, so you bring up the topic, not in a negative way, but in a way that you can openly communicate and talk about your disagreements or your agreements or something like that. Responsible parenting, sharing parental responsibilities, being a positive, nonviolent role model for the children. Responsible parenting, sharing parental responsibilities, like, even if you don't get along with the person anymore, you should still try to share parenting responsibilities, because, like, parenting is a lot of work. Like, it's not only a lot of work, it's expensive and time consuming and everything. So it's important that both parents are there, even if they're not together. It's important that they're working together. Being a positive, non-violent role model for the children, that's definitely being a responsible parent. You don't want to, basically, children learn what you teach them. So if you teach them to be violent, then they're going to be violent. And you don't necessarily have to, like, teach them like in a classroom environment. You can just teach them by your actions, which is you just maybe arguing with the other person and calling them names in front of the children, or you slap the other person in front of them, or hit them, or pull their hair. You're showing those children it's okay to do those things. Shared responsibility. Mutually agreeing on a fair distribution of work, making family decisions together, and that's just sharing responsibilities. It is important to not overburden one person with too much work or the other person, and it's also important that major decisions in the family be made together. And honestly, I like to include the children whenever I'm making decisions at my house, just so they know what's going on. Economic partnership, making money decisions together, making sure both partners benefit from financial arrangements. And this is definitely under equality, because if you're in a partnership, you obviously, if one partner is being ripped off, that's not really a partnership. So making decisions about what the money's purchasing, where the profits are going and everything, or even within the family setting, how the money is being spent on supplies or recreational activities for fun or something like that. So definitely making decisions together is equality, and making sure both partners benefit from financial arrangements. That would definitely be equality, because it's not really equal if the results aren't balanced for everyone. So definitely need everyone to benefit from it. Negotiations and fairness. Seeking mutually satisfying resolutions to conflict. Accepting change. Being willing to compromise. Negotiation and fairness, just working together and being fair on both sides. Seeking mutually satisfying resolutions to conflict. I guess that'd be like you talk everything out. You agree that maybe doing it this way is not going to work out, and to avoid having a conflict and arguments, you'll go ahead and go along with the other person's decisions. So then we have accepting change for negotiation and fairness, and that could just be that things change and both people have to accept it to be fair. And if one person doesn't accept the change, then I guess it's not fair for them, but it's not really a negotiation if they're not accepting it either, so that's kind of a strange situation. Being willing to compromise, that's just not always taking 100% and giving 0. It's, trying to, I want to do it this way, but at the same time, this person's working with me, they want to do it this way, so we have to kind of compromise and work together. And that's going to be everything on the power and control. Again, like I was saying, you can find the power and control wheel on the internet, and you can print it out if you want to have a copy of it for yourself to keep around the house. It's really a good visual to set out. That it's somewhere where you see, in front of your face on the freezer or something like that. That way, it's like repetition instills the memory. So every time you open this freezer, if you see this thing, it's kind of repeating the same thought process, and then you read through some of it and you start to remember it slowly by reading it over and over again. And that's going to be it for Mike's Place for today. thank you, and see you next time. Make sure you give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want more content, and if you liked what you saw. Thank you, and have a good day.